And we are live. Welcome to the NFL Strategy Show Lineup Construction Edition. I am Josh Engleman, and I am joined by the boss, Alex Baker. Alex, how you doing? How was week one?
Doing good. Week one, not so good, but I'm gonna chalk it up to some bad luck because man, there was some fluky stuff. Like I at the end of the Cincinnati Chargers game, I had a lineup that had a stack of Joe Burrow and AJ Green, and he caught a touchdown that was called back, and then if it went to overtime, I probably would have had a shot. So it's like it's one of those weeks. Like it was possible to win even with Boston Scott.
Yeah.
But it didn't make it happen. How about you, man? How did you fare?
Pretty brutal. Same sort of story there for Boston Scott. Not enough Jacobs, not enough Devontae Adams. Marvin Jones was the guy that I sort of hitched my wagon to. That didn't work, and that's NFL for you. Like if you don't have those main couple pieces, it's going to become pretty difficult to add it all up. I do actually have last week's slant from Draftkings pulled up on the screen. You did finish 7th. Kudos to you for that one. That is the Joe Burrow lineup, along with Boston Scott, I might add. Wanted to get a couple thoughts here from you. We see, since we're talking a little bit more about lineup construction, we see basically the full run of different options in the top 20 for this contest. Quarterback with two wideouts. I'm just going to lump tight ends with wideouts for right now. Quarterback with, two pass catchers, bringing one back. Quarterback with a running back, a wideout, bringing one back. Quarterback with a wide receiver, bringing two back. Naked stacks. Your lineup in particular only had the QB and the wideout. Nothing brought back. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. You're more or less trying to find like a scatter shot of those combinations, at least in a contest that has 39,000 plus entries. It could be a little bit different in a smaller field, but I'm assuming you're going to have most of those options brought together into one big crunch. Would I be correct?
Yeah, I mean, I do crunches of each of these stacks, and I kind of try to figure out which are my best lineups. So last week I found like the strategy I landed on was really spending down at quarterback.
Yeah.
It turned out that Aaron Rodgers was the best scoring quarterback, but he was a little bit more expensive than the guys I was on. So like in this lineup, I believe I had Thielen and Adams, and
yeah.
I guess like I'm not really sure if like people talk a lot about the game stack where like you don't have the quarterback, but maybe that's like an interesting strategy you can play around with, and then like there could be certain situations where the quarterback just doesn't fit the lineup.
Yeah.
So then you have to go to like a secondary stack. So and that was kind of an interesting lineup that was my outlier for the week. But like all these strategies that people use in the top here, they're all stacked pretty much except for that one.
Yeah.
Who had Lamar. So that's like a good exception. It's really about like the actual like players we're talking about and not like the actual strategy, because if you have one wide receiver stacked and they're like Michael Thomas, that could be like even more correlated than having like two bad wide receivers stacked with a quarterback. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's not like you don't want to necessarily put one label on everything. You want to be able to look down into the individual players we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm finding more and more that it feels like quarterback is like an afterthought, almost like choosing your defense. We're just looking at the top 10. Rodgers, Cousins, Ryan, Trubisky, Wilson, Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. All of those guys made the top 10. It's clear that you could have had essentially anybody in that position and still had a chance to win the contest. Do you think that people... I don't want to say, do you think people pay too much attention to trying to pick a quarterback? But it seems as though like the replacement level of a quarterback in a particular DFS lineup is not all that high.
Yeah, that was really interesting last week, how there was no one quarterback that really was essential. So that's something we see from time to time, but I mean, like that was crazy. That I guess quarterback's probably one of the positions that's most consistent in scoring. So you're gonna see several quarterbacks with like a good enough score every week, unless one really just goes for 40 plus.
So I have it pulled up where I just filtered down the slant to show only the top 1% of lineups. So in this case, the top 392 lineups are on the screen. And if we look at, move my share around. There we go. Matt Ryan is in 25% of those top lineups. Russell Wilson, 23. Aaron Rodgers, 18. That's where you see the drop off. But it's Josh Allen in 6. Lamar in 6. Kirk Cousins in 6. Is there anything to glean from that? Is there anything you would want to take away from week 1? Or is it just simply the quarterback is going to end up being coming along for the ride with whatever you have in the rest of your lineup, and not to get totally bogged down on any individual one quarterback? Like do you ever look at it and think like, this is a quarterback I need?
I think it depends on the lineup. So like if you have two really good pass catchers from a team, you need to put the quarterback in in your lineup too, because otherwise you're going to be drawing dead against all the other people that have the quarterback plus those same receivers, since like the quarterback passing performance is like the sum of all the receivers.
Right.
So if you're just building a less correlated lineup, then that's where like you can kind of be more creative with the quarterback. So last week, Devontae Adams and MVS would have been like kind of the optimal stack. If you have both of those guys, you probably want Rodgers, but if you only have one of them, you don't need him.
Okay. Yeah, Devontae Adams in 84% of the top 1% lineups. That was the highest number. Josh Jacobs second at 72%. Calvin Ridley, 57%. And then everybody below that is 38% or lower. Is there something that we could look at, whether that's just the spread of the way that guys show up in the top 1% of lineups in relationship to their ownership? Is there anything that we could take away? It's almost like a shotgun blast across the main 1%, where you can really get you're going to need, there's going to be 2 to 3 essentials. The Adams, the Jacobs, you're probably not going to get to that top spot if you don't have both of the guys that go nuts. But when you get to that 30% to below, is there something that we can sort of take away from the fact that you can just sort of get there with, I don't want to say anything because that sounds insane, but you can mix and match so many different guys because there are just, the player pool is just so huge. Is there anything we could take away from that with regards to like projected ownership, where we probably saw most of these guys be somewhere between 3 and 7% projected for the day?
I think the key takeaway is just you need to hit, like the top 4 plays of the week probably if you want to win. And then the rest of your lineup just needs to not blow it for you. So like, for example, Antonio Gibson was in 20% of the top 100 lineups. Yeah, like a rough week. He just was like cheaper than Boston Scott, and he didn't like absolutely put up a dud. Yeah. So I think that it shows like when you go for those value guys, they don't necessarily have to have a big week to get you towards the top. But this week or this past week was a good example because Boston Scott, like people won big tournaments with him in the lineup. So I'd say just don't stress out too much about like every player like hitting and like the potential of every player hitting, and that if you can get like 3 to 4 like upside guys in every lineup, like all these guys that you needed were pretty expensive. Devontae Adams, Jacobs, Ridley. So having unique combinations of those spend up options can really hit big.
I don't know your particular answer for this, but I'm going to at least cycle down. You did play a ton of Josh Jacobs in this contest last week, 70% from what I have on the screen. Boston Scott in a ton. Obviously, that's a very different play given his salary. It's a lot easier to have a ton of Boston Scott and not worry about it than the Michael Thomas or Christian McCaffrey, where you're getting a very specific construction. You can do a lot of different things having a lot of Boston Scott. Your third most exposed player was Allen Robinson at 33%. So after that, we're coming all the way down. I'm assuming there's largely an upper bound for you on an NFL slate for at least guys that are more of the higher salary vibe. It's almost going to be, you're almost looking to spread out the top guys and concentrate on a particular value play. Otherwise, you can just be there are so many good wide receivers. Like to sort between Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Adam Thielen, McLaurin, Michael Thomas, the top of the upper echelon, even like Hilton or DJ Moore, knowing that you need to get basically the guy that goes nuts right. I assume you're looking more towards a flatter exposure to the more expensive players, more concentrated at the bottom. That might be the unintended consequence of what you're doing and not necessarily the goal as you start. But what would it take for you to be like really heavy on an expensive guy? Or is that just probably not going to be a part of your method each week?
Yeah, I mean, the probability in football of any one player like really outperforming their salary is pretty low. And the opportunity cost of all these expensive guys like Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Thielen, Christian McCaffrey, it's like you can only fit one or two of those guys in the lineup, maybe two or three or whatever. But I think that that just makes it hard to get for them to be like exceptional plays relative to their salary because you're already paying like top dollar for them.
Right.
But Josh Jacobs was one guy that he wasn't cheap. I just thought that he was one of the best plays, and he just kind of fit. The ownership wasn't super high, so I had him a lot. But Josh, how about you, man? Who were your highest exposed players last week?
Boston Scott for one. Marvin Jones for two. I really like that spot with Kenny Golladay out and wasn't really picking up much ownership. And that's sort of what, like, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I looked at his salary where he was coming in at, something preposterously low. Where's he hiding? I cannot find his name in there. Oh, okay. So I was looking for the junior along the right-hand side, but it wasn't there. It's just Marvin Jones because nobody's name can be consistent anywhere. At 5,500, moving into that top wide receiver spot, I was very comfortable having him be sort of the guy that I locked up, but that didn't go well. He didn't score. I had a lot of George Kittle. That did not work as well. Yeah. And then the problem became like, I don't really see how I sift through Julio, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, obviously a little bit different because of the injury, but Hopkins, Thielen, like those guys on paper are going to look pretty similar each week. And I probably was a little bit too worried about ownership. So Adams ended up being a pretty chalky play. He naturally came down. I went a little bit more towards the guys that weren't picking up ownership in that salary tier. And then when someone like Adams goes for 40 fantasy points, it comes back to bite you a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not mad about it. It worked as intended. That's why you really have to be strong mentally to not overreact to just 1 week of NFL. I mean, or 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. How do you go about not getting discouraged in the NFL? It's very different than playing basketball or baseball where you can get right back into it the next day.
Well, I think just playing more slates where, I mean, you can only play 3 days a week, but there's about like 20 different slates you can play on Sunday, like between all the showdown, afternoon, prime time, Sunday night, Monday to Thursday. Like a lot of these aren't the sexiest slates, but sure. Like the biggest piece of advice to anyone watching this is that like it's probably better to like spread out all of your play across a lot of different slates than to just go hard on the Sunday main slate, because really there's not, I mean, Sunday main slate is where you can win the big bucks, but the advantage in those isn't that much different than another slate if you do the right research and stuff. So I think that it probably makes more sense to be more diversified in slate selection than to go hard on Sunday. Oh man.
Yeah, people probably don't want to hear this particular piece, but let's just say you're a cash game player in the NFL, main slates only. So we'll throw out week 17 to make these numbers look a little cleaner. If let's just say a break-even player, so you're expecting to go 8-8 in a 16-week NFL season, what's the real likelihood for you then? Anywhere between 4 and 12 winning weeks? Like it is. You can't walk out of an NFL season if you are simply a cash player and feel... Now, you could have a wealth of individual head-to-heads, so to speak, so you can get a better idea where you are against the field. But, I mean, you can't come... It's really hard to come out of a 16-week NFL season and think like, oh, I just had a good NFL season or a bad one. The error bars are just too big.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 weeks of NBA, basically.
Yeah.
Like... And we, all of us DFS regulars know that, like, what happens in 16 slates, that's subject to a huge variance. I mean, one thing you can do in NFL is just have more diversification to different plays, because it's not like NBA where certain players are like must-haves usually. So at least you can spread out your exposure a little bit that way.
So I know you spreading out exposure, being highly diversified in your lineups is a key tenet for you. Is there a point that you think about how, because obviously you're thinking, if I could play this slate an infinite amount of times, this is what I would like to be doing. Does there come a threshold where you realize that you can't play that slate infinitely? Like where you try to be a little bit more concentrated? I know a lot of people will see this information and think, what can I like, or even just the first question of what should I set my uniques to? What should I set my randomness to? And it's like, well, that's a loaded question, because you played 125 people in your player pool for the slant last week. Other highly ranked pros are going to have the exact opposite scenario of you, playing 40 to 50. And the settings that you're going to use come down to more of a personal preference, or even like how well can you stomach getting bludgeoned each week decision. Are there any situations where you are more concentrated in a DFS contest in comparison to in like the NFL where you're spread out? Are there any weeks where you think that you would come in the opposite direction?
Well, I think it depends on how good like the best plays are, because one of the interesting things about NFL is there's like such a game correlation where like you might know there's a good chance that a lot of the winning players will come from one game, but it's really hard to predict what game it is.
Yeah.
Just because like it requires like a very specific like way the game plays out, and that is extremely hard to foresee. So that would be one way you could get like a lot of different exposure, is like in some lineups you have Thielen and Adams, maybe others you have DJ Chark and Hilton. Mm-hmm. And then like another you might have Jarvis Landry and Marquise Brown. It's like all these, like they have interesting correlation, and that allows you to like kind of hedge your bets a lot.
Okay. Guys, we have a bit of free content today, which is always fun. If you're interested in looking at some of Alex's information, our NFL Express Top Stacks tool is free today. If you're playing NFL, and I assume if you're watching this show or listening to it later on the podcast feed, you are interested in NFL, get there today. Check out our Top Stack tools data. Love the Top Stack tool across all sports. Love it for baseball. Love the Top Pitchers tool for baseball. Love the Top Stack tool for the NFL. Definitely helps me make some adjustments on NFL Sunday. If you're playing NBA today, our NBA rankings are free. And if you're playing MLB projections, the top of the line, they are free as well. Go check that stuff out. I wanted to get into one little piece before we try to do a little bit of like lineup construction for today. I want to talk a little bit about the strategy of building a lineup for a large field contest in comparison to building a lineup for a smaller field contest. Let's say we have the slant for instance, 39,000 plus. So we're talking pretty large field. I'm throwing the milli out because that's barely a real contest. There's just too many people in there buying lottery tickets. It's too much. Or let's say we're looking at, let's say less than 5 lineups. Something like, what's a good small contest? Okay, the power sweep. So we're talking $150 buy-in, 3 max, 1,480 entries into that contest. So massively smaller. What is the first thing that you want to pay attention to when entering a lineup into a limited field contest in comparison to entering a lineup into a massive field contest?
Well, I think the best lineups in NFL are pretty similar between different field sizes. Like there's some sports where like you want to have a totally different strategy in a large field or small field. Like MMA comes to mind.
Yeah.
Because of all the dupes and like the leverage you can get and stuff. But in NFL, like solid lineup construction is kind of like constant throughout all the different tournaments.
Yeah.
The biggest difference is that like in a small field tournament, the advantage of going to someone that's low owned is a lot less because like say you got a 500 person tournament and you have a player in 5 lineups, like that means that player is going to be 1% owned at least, right? So it's like the value of going to someone that's sub 1% or sub 3% or whatever is going to be lower because you just like influence that ownership more.
And you're more likely, I would imagine, to see concentration at the top. So in our ownership projections, what was Boston Scott? Like roughly 30 or so heading into the slate.
Yeah.
In this 3 max with 1,400 entries, you're going to see that climb higher like a cash game in comparison to the larger field stuff where it's likely to be smaller. I assume you're going to see it be a lot different in the NFL in comparison to the NBA in that so many of these guys in the NFL might be 5% owned guys that are all sort of the same. Whereas in the NBA, the ownership is just naturally going to be higher across a larger sect of these players. You can get, even in this just the $1,481 entry power sweep, someone like, where's a really good example? I mean, even just Odell Beckham at 5,900, 9% owned. Like you even if you're just starting there, you're already not super worried about like duplication any longer. There's not much to worry about. How are you treating ownership in a smaller field contest, knowing that someone like Boston Scott is going to be coming in higher, or at least you would expect him to be coming in higher than our ownership projections? Is there anything that you're doing to make changes for yourself, knowing that each one of these contests are slightly different?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the biggest change I make personally is I'll try to generate different lineups based on like how sharp the field is, basically, because the reason why Boston Scott's higher owned in like a 500-person contest is just like a larger percentage of the people entering are going to be sharp players. So I think that like the value of the top guys is a lot less on like a higher stakes tournament or a smaller field tournament. So like your strategy shouldn't be going as much towards chalk. It needs to kind of react to that because all of the edge in going there is diminished. So like a way we could apply that this week is Jonathan Taylor, Kenyon Drake. These guys are probably at the top of plays so far.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor in particular, I think he's going to be really trendy because Marlon Mack is injured. It's like he's projected for 30% ownership right now. But if you're playing a 500-person tournament, that might be like 50 or 60. So that's the point where maybe pivoting and going to someone else has a lot more value.
And you can see I have your exposures for the 3 max from last week on the screen. All 3 lineups with Boston Scott, all 3 lineups with Josh Jacobs. Then the following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next 9 guys in actual ownership, not in a single one of your lineups. At that point in time, even though you are getting the 2 most chalky plays of this contest, your next 9 are just not there. Like you're making unique lineups that are still fitting your projection system as best as possible. I'm going to dial into your lineups quickly just to see what you actually ended up with. I'm curious to see if it was three. Yep, Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater, Mitch Trubisky. Very similar ownership projection on all three. You left $100 on the table on one lineup, $200 on the other. One is a quarterback tight end stack. One is a quarterback wide receiver stack. One is a quarterback plus two, plus bringing one back. So you're running the gamut of different lineup constructions. Outside of the fact that you had Boston Scott and Josh Jacobs in all three lineups, I mean the rest of those lineups are, I don't want to say essentially random because they're not random to you, but there's not a ton of overlap. Only Allen Robinson and DJ Moore are in two of the three. The rest of those lineups are fully unique to each other. Is that an intention for you for a 3 max entry where you're trying to be very largely different? Are you trying to avoid, competing with yourself as much as possible in that contest?
Well, I missed which contest this was.
This is the $150 3 max.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I definitely had I just put my highest ranked higher stakes lineups that I made into the top 3. So I think it was more just circumstance, whereas if you have Boston Scott and Josh Jacobs as the best plays, probably the best lineups you're going to make are going to have both of them.
Yep.
And then sometimes I'll try to get different stacks in the different lineups because I feel like that is a big differentiation point. I don't worry too much about overlapping with myself because there are so many people in the tournament that a lot of people are going to have similar lineups no matter what you do pretty much. So,
okay.
But I think last week I just didn't love a lot of the more popular players like Terry McLaurin, Deshaun Jackson, Austin Eckler, Metcalf. None of those guys were really ones that were even really on my radar. Maybe other people were seeing stuff I didn't, but that's part of how I landed on the plays I liked, like Allen Robinson and some others, just because I thought they were the best plays of that bunch, and all of them were similarly owned.
Are there any other major tenets that you would want to point out to everybody? We might be dropping this stream. I don't believe we are broadcasting right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm at full 0 kilobytes per second right now.
Ooh.
Hopefully we come back up pretty naturally. Let's find out if we get a new link, which I assume that we will. So for anybody trickling in right now, the Periscope and Twitch people are going to get this immediately. We'll see where we end up from a YouTube event perspective. Could it be that we're on the same link? Could that? I mean, that never used to work. Can that be working now? Back up and running. Same link.
That's awesome.
Maybe that's YouTube. Maybe YouTube saved the day here.
Nice.
Has YouTube just changed this so that you don't lose your link? That'd be great. I'd be really happy. I'd be really happy about that. So that's my bad, guys. I blew it all. This is all my fault. So blame me. We can get back into this right now. I know that the last thing that I asked you was, are there any final tenets that you would explain to people in terms of putting in a lineup into a smaller field contest, into a larger field contest?
I think it's just mostly the ownership where you can expect the better plays to be higher owned in sharper fields. So it depends on the contest a little bit, because if it's a single entry, that might not be a sharper field. But if it's just small contests because of a different reason and it's still 3% max, then trying to be a little bit more off of the chalk plays can be a good strategy. Okay.
Guys, we have a lot of content going on today. I realize we just lost 5 minutes with my technical defects, but we've got Matt and Kyle coming up immediately after this at noon, doing a start-sit show for season long. Ben and Julian are doing a betting show at 2:30. Jason, Jeff, and Terry are going to have MLB Live Before Lock at 6 p.m. And then myself and Rinpack are going live for NBA Live Before Lock at 8:15 Eastern Time. Yes, that is an accurate time. That game tips off at 9 o'clock tonight, which is not great for the East Coast and me because I will never see the end of that game, unfortunately. But I wish that I would. But now I think we're at the time where I think we should build a lineup. What do you think?
That's it.
All right. Do you want to go more from a cash perspective or more of a GPP perspective today? Last week we took out cash.
Let's do one of each.
Okay, that works. I've got lineup builder locked and loaded. Looks like I need to actually log in, so let me do that as well.
We did just get some news in the NFL from Jamison Crowder is out this week, so that'll be interesting because I just looked at the Jets depth chart and like half their wide receivers are on the IR, so a pretty thin group today.
And it's the Jets, so you're never really they're not deep in talent.
That's true.
Okay, so let's start off on the GPP side for right now because I want to make sure that this week's show at least looks a little bit different than last week's.
Nice.
Is there a place that you would just immediately start when trying to build a single GPP lineup? Let's say that we are approaching this as if this lineup would go into a smaller field contest.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably look at my top stacks just to try to see what's getting the ownership, what is going to be under the radar. I'm seeing maybe Kansas City, Atlanta, Carolina. Those are going to be top targets for single entry for me because they're low owned and I think they have a pretty good chance of success. So Kansas City, like I feel like they're always so expensive that it might be hard to really justify that, but I might go to Atlanta then because they got this matchup versus Dallas. Dallas is a tough team, which isn't a bad thing when you're stacking up against them because you really want the resistance so you get more passing attempts. And Atlanta's got some really good players, so.
Yeah, I have this game, or I have the top stacks tool pulled up right now. Top 3 stacks from a stack percentage standpoint. Although I think we should probably look at it from 4 because there's kind of a chasm after the 4th. Dallas, Kansas City, Atlanta, Arizona. But obviously Atlanta and Dallas playing each other. Is that something that plays into your decision a little bit? Would you be more likely to be bringing someone back knowing that it's a top stack for both sides?
Well, I think bringing someone back is always a pretty good strategy.
Okay.
And like the times where you really want to do it, like would be if you stack Kansas City this week, they're 9-point favorites versus the Chargers. So like if that stack's gonna really overperform their salary, you need the Chargers to do something.
Okay.
So then like stacking up Keenan Allen with your Kansas City guys makes a lot of sense. On the flip side, if you stack up the Chargers, they're going to be probably playing from behind a lot of the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Kansas City is going to put up like an outlier relative to their salary. So if you're stacking up the Chargers as a big underdog, I might not run it back with Tyreek Hill just because he's like so expensive. If he like gets 20, that would be decent for his salary and good enough to keep the Chargers going, but not good enough to win you a GPP.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Atlanta. Atlanta, third highest in the top stack odds. Matt Ryan's ownership coming in below those top stack odds. So I'm going to just go ahead and grab Matt Ryan right out of the gate. The question then becomes, is it Julio Jones? Is it Calvin Ridley? Hayden Hurst? 2 of those 3 guys. Todd Gurley, perhaps? I don't know what your thoughts are there. Not really as much of a pass catching back as I would really like in that spot. Julio, 17% owned. Calvin Ridley, 13.5. Hayden Hurst, not all that owned. Is there a direction you would want to go right off the bat? Is this a Matt Ryan +2, Matt Ryan +1? Is there a particular guy from Dallas you would be wanting to bring back? It looks like Amari Cooper picking up quite a bit of ownership, as is Michael Gallup.
I think there's a lot of ways to tackle this stack because you got so many options.
Yeah.
And that might make it so like even though the Atlanta stack is 6% owned, like maybe you can get more differentiation than some other stacks where like Chicago, for instance, where Allen Robinson is going to be in like every stack pretty much. So I kind of like that about Atlanta, that it has two alpha guys with Ridley and Jones. I mean, my natural inclination is Ridley had the big game last week, so maybe Jones is a little bit under-owned relative to how good he is.
Okay. Do you want to start with just Jones? Do you have any interest in adding in Hayden Hurst, perhaps?
Yeah, I think Hurst is a good idea. He's not like a great price this week at 4,600, but getting that additional correlation at tight end, which is a tough spot to fill, could be a good idea.
Do you have any personal preferences for who can come back in a lineup? Are you trying to be a little bit more concentrated towards their like the higher fantasy point projected guys instead of sort of like the wide, like the flyer? Like if we weren't using Hurst, bringing back Dalton Schultz doesn't necessarily seem like it's super relevant. To me, we would be looking at this. It's probably Zeke, Cooper, Gallup. I don't know if CeeDee Lamb like makes the most sense trying to build for a smaller field GPP to get the third, or maybe even if you want to say fourth most important pass catcher if we include Zeke. So do you have any preferences for the type of player that comes back in a lineup?
I think just like avoiding that like good value pick like is smart. Just because like a lot of times there's like a 4K receiver that isn't very good. That like as you're saying, CeeDee Lamb might fit that bill this week. Yeah. I mean, he's a rookie, so we don't know exactly what to expect yet. But they have two great receivers in Gallup and Cooper. Yeah. It's kind of the same logic I'd be using. Gallup got 5 targets last week. Cooper got 14. They play the same number of snaps, so maybe that flips, or maybe, I mean, I expect Cooper to be a little bit higher targeted, yeah, but not that much. So I'm thinking that maybe people will be down on Gallup this week, and that'd be a good option. Okay. Ezekiel Elliott also solid.
I'll give you the pick: Zeke or Gallup.
I kind of like Gallup just because he didn't get that usage last week, and maybe people will be cooler on him.
Okay, so we've got Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst, Michael Gallup in the lineup right now. We still need 2 running backs, a wide receiver, our flex spot, and then I assume whatever defense we determine to put at the bottom. $5,100 remaining on average. I would say that we would want to grab a running back at this point. Given the ownership on Matt Ryan and Hurst, I don't think that there are any particular people that we need to be negative towards. Is there a running back that immediately stands out to you that would work in this lineup? And we can pretty much go wherever we want here.
Yeah, I think, let's see. I'm pulling up my big board to remember who. I guess
I'm doing the same thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we spent up on the stack, so we need some value guys now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe, man, the value this week is pretty tough. But Kenyon Drake at 5,900,
yeah,
versus the football team. I think he's going to be a plug and play in pretty much any lineup. I saw people clamoring about how Chase Edmonds was better than him last week, but I'm not really buying into that, so I'm comfortable with Drake.
Is Kenyon Drake sort of this week's Josh Jacobs for you?
Well, I think the matchup is really solid versus Washington. So Arizona has a 27-point total. They're big favorites, so everything's kind of leading to Drake. Yeah, so I don't think he's quite as good as Josh Jacobs last week, but solid.
Okay. All right, Kenyon Drake in. We have 19,900 left. Running back, wide receiver, flex, plus a defense. So, call it 1,700 or 17,000 left across 3 spots. It's a pretty sizable amount. I think we can go in any direction right now for our next pick. Doesn't necessarily just have to be at running back. So if I sort this down to running back, tight end, and wide out, just looking at your big board, different directions we can go. We can make a homer pick here. 5th on your big board, $6,400. Allen Robinson. any qualms going to Robinson right out of the gate. Pretty high ranking. Or Odell Beckham, but that doesn't really do us much good considering he played yesterday.
If only we could, man, that'd be killer.
Yeah.
I think Robinson versus the Giants is nice because, I mean, Giants' pass defense is really bad, so he stands out as a good play this week.
Perfect. I will go ahead and grab Robinson, slot him in. So now we need a running back and a flex plus our defense. 4,500 on average, but clearly defense not going to be coming in all that high. So we've got, 5-6K easy to spend on two separate guys. Are you looking to do any further correlation? Or would you want to do anything because you already have Drake or because you already have Allen Robinson, or are we going to try to be different in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, we could think about maybe a Giants receiver. If there was one we wanted, I probably wouldn't force it, but I think right now we need a value play. So I'll throw out a few names here, and we can kind of talk about who we like in this lineup.
Okay.
We got Rashad Perryman.
Yeah.
He's kind of intriguing because he played all the snaps last week, and Jamison Crowder is out. The matchup is really bad, though. So maybe the touchdown equity is not very good. We got Damier Byrd for New England. Oh, wait, no, that's Sunday night game. Scratch that. We got James Robinson, Jacksonville versus Tennessee.
Yeah.
Another bad matchup, but good workload player. And then
Corey Davis saw a ton of targets in their week 1 matchup. Gets the matchup against Jacksonville, which is obviously favorable.
And AJ Brown is out.
Yeah. So do we want to go to Corey Davis? Is that a nice? I think that works for a nice value. 4K wide receiver, given his targets in week 1.
Yeah, that works for me.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and get him added. Corey Davis, only 9.5% ownership in our last run. So that means we have 9,500 remaining for a running back and a defense. That's pretty monstrous. That's going to open up pretty much any running back we want that isn't Christian McCaffrey.
Nice.
What in the world did I filter? Oh, $5,000. I was like, what am I doing?
Kamara, with no Michael. Oh, wait, no, that's Monday night. I need to really have a slate filter here. Okay.
I was going to say that we're learning on the fly that adding some sort of filter to get some of these guys out of here is a key feature for the big board coming up soon.
Okay, so we got 10K about.
We do, and I think we're going to end up being able to make an upgrade somewhere by the time we're done. We have 9,500 remaining, running back and defense left.
Well, we could go with Derrick Henry. He's playing against Jacksonville, so you got to think that he could get a lot of rushing attempts. And then the only problem is we'd have to go to a 2K defense, but we got the Jets D.
So here's the question. If we do that, I don't think that we could really move off of Corey Davis. We would have the two-person Titan stack at that point. Corey Davis at 4K is...
Oh, that's right, yeah. That doesn't make a lot of sense then.
Yeah. So we're really finding it to be a little tricky to get to a legitimate running back option. The only other one that I can see, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Do we want to turn this into a bigger game stack and add Zeke?
I mean, I don't love it because, I mean, Zeke and Gallup, it's hard to, unless this game goes just ape, the problem is I feel like this is the game of the week that people are going to stack to.
Okay.
So I think the way I'd fill this out is I would switch Corey Davis for Rashad Perryman. That gives us 9,700. That might not be enough to get Derrick Henry.
We have 1,800 if we have Henry and Perryman.
Okay, so that doesn't work.
No, it does not. I don't know. Is there an $1,800? You never know when they're going to just have the Jags be garbage or something along those lines.
Yeah. We could go to a more value running back too. We could go to Miles Sanders or David Johnson.
Is this a spot where we go to Zeke instead of Gallup and find a different mid-tier wide receiver?
That's a good option too. Yeah, I like that because Gallup, it just seems to be hard to fill out that running back spot otherwise.
So now we have 10-9 remaining for a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense. That is with Zeke now in at running back. Finding a wide receiver in the lower-ish tier. Well, now we can go back to Corey Davis.
Let's do that.
Since we aren't going to have Derrick Henry in there. Corey Davis slots in. So now we have 6,900 for flex and defense. Nice. We can, at the very least, we were going to say, no more than 4,900 for any flex option. That, I think, gives us a little bit of wiggle room. 4,900. The highest ranked guy on your big board under 4,900 is Chris Herndon at 3,400. I don't get the sense we're going to go with the 2 tight end set here with Chris Herndon. Just guessing.
He's a good play, but I think that the touchdown equity for the Jets is probably going to be pretty terrible. So for a flex play, like maybe go into a different guy is going to be higher upside.
Brashad Perryman, the highest ranked guy on your big board, under 4,900. He's at 38. That would allow us 3,100 for our defense.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Let's
Preston Williams, 4,800. That would slot us in perfectly for a $2,100 defense or lower.
Yeah, I like that. I think that Preston Williams is interesting. He played 97% of the snaps, got 7 targets. The matchup's tough, but they'll probably have to pass a lot, so I like it.
All right, so we've got 2,100 remaining for a defense. I'll let you choose whichever defense you think is just amazing this week. Looks like Jets D is tops from the big board, or the Dolphins D.
I think the Jets defense is kind of intriguing, but it's just the price really, not the matchup.
Yeah,
it's just Garoppolo does throw a good amount of picks. He's a little bit under 3%, so that adds a little bit of upside. And Jets are a little bit stronger on the defensive side, so it's kind of a contrarian move, but I kind of like it.
Lineup is done. We left $100 on the board, projected for 140.58. Contrarian ranking, less than 10%. Value ranking, greater than 90%. I think we did a pretty good job here.
Nice.
Especially going in with the thought process of building for a smaller field contest. I don't think that we need that contrarian ranking to be, 100%. I like it.
I think it's fine. The one chalky thing we did is we stacked up the most popular game.
Yeah.
But based on my top stacks, it's for a reason. There is a good chance this game is the game of the week to stack, about 20%. So that's really good odds on that 12-game slate.
I like it. Guys, we just gave you the goods for DraftKings this week. When this lineup wins insert contest here, I hope there's a kickback. Don't be afraid to send in a super chat or, I don't know, find us on Venmo or something.
Yeah, the tip jar is at the door, guys.
So I think we need to wrap it up now. It's 11:55. We're going to be turning it over to the season-long show. Is there anything else you want to touch on holistically for week 2 in terms of roster construction? Anything that stands out to you based on where our ownership is right now? Or is this looking kind of similar to week 1?
Let's just do a quick cash lineup because I feel like it's going to be real easy.
Sure.
Basically, for cash, we're just going to go to the guys that are benefiting from all these injuries and finish it off with a bunch of studs, I think.
Okay.
So Corey Davis, Brashad Perryman, Chris Herndon, and we already talked about all these guys. So let me pull up the big board again.
I've got Corey Davis in, Perryman in, Herndon in.
Then maybe Drake. Maybe we can fit in Christian McCaffrey.
That's probably going to be pretty easy at this point.
Nice, yeah. So just fitting the value plays to get the top studs of the day. I think that makes cash easy this week.
Let's see. So based on your big board, are we going back? I guess we're going back to Devontae Adams if we can. 6th on your big board, 8,100.
Yeah, Adams, Jonathan Taylor is another guy that's going to really benefit from injury, so he makes a really nice cash play. Yeah.
I like it. We're putting this together pretty quickly. So 9,100. I've got Drake, McCaffrey, Davis, Perriman, Adams, Herndon, Taylor. 9,100 left for a quarterback and a defense. I assume our quarterback is going to be one of Lamar Jackson or Mahomes. I just don't remember who's on what slate at this point.
Mahomes is on the main slate. I think they're both on the main slate, right?
Mahomes is, I don't know.
Yeah, they're both on the main slate.
Okay. So then, do you have a preference between the two? Mahomes ahead of Lamar in the big board.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that if we have, based on our salary left, we got to go with Mahomes because he's 500 cheaper.
Ooh, we're not going to Mahomes. That doesn't leave us enough money.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
No, we're under 2K then.
They are so expensive this week that it's going to be really hard to justify picking one of them.
So it's looking like Kyler Murray is your top option. Are you okay with that option in cash?
Oh yeah, I mean, like he showed last week that he's gonna be huge, like regardless of whether they do it on the ground or the air. So he's really gonna be a good cash game option. And the only thing is, do we have too much money left now?
We have 3K left for a defense.
Okay, that's not bad.
No. Any preference for that defense?
I mean, my strategy is just go against the worst quarterback.
So who do the Bears play?
That's a good question. I think
it's the Giants, so we're not doing that.
So they're not a bad play this week, but it looks like we got the Cardinals defense versus Washington football team.
Okay. Where are they hiding now? Arizona. I just clicked on them. Where'd they go? There we go. Defense in. Oh, and we had exactly 3K left. So contrarian ranking, under 10. Value ranking, greater than 90%. Cash lineup, locked and loaded.
Nice.
And we built that in 4 minutes, too. 11:59. We're not even running late.
Yeah, so it should be a fun week. I think week 2 is always fun because like we got like a little bit of data, but not a lot. So I think people are going to overreact a little bit to that. We got all these injuries too that create all these value spots. So that'll be fun to create some chalk and some leverage and stuff like that. So it should be a good week.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us. Please hit that like button. I haven't asked at all, mostly because we went down in the middle of it and I didn't get a chance to. So please hit the thumbs up. It helps us out a ton. Tune into the rest of the shows we have coming up for the rest of the day. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. Subscribe to our podcast feed as well. Every show that we do ends up on our podcast feed. You could subscribe to individual sports or just get everything if you want. So do that. Alex, you got On the Contrary tomorrow?
Yep, I think we got Brian Hooper, aka Brick, joining us, so that'll be fun.
There you go. That's going to be a good show. I would highly recommend checking it out. I will definitely be watching. I'm always interested to see what Brick has to say in terms of strategy for DFS. So anything else, Alex?
Well, we got one question in chat I think is interesting. The baller said, what am I missing? Why is this guy like Arizona so much? The Skins defense was smothering. So I want to answer that question real quick because I mean the football team, like they showed they got some good defensive line, and Philadelphia's offensive line was all banged up, but this is falling under the category of don't react too much to last week because all the betting markets say Arizona is a huge favorite in this game. They have one of the highest team totals of the week at 27, and basically like this is the sharpest money coming in on all these lines. So that's going to be a better estimate than just looking at the box scores from week 1. So that's kind of one of my approaches.
There you go. Pay attention to Vegas lines, guys. It's not going to get more accurate than that. They're taking in bukus of money, and they don't want to be wrong. So follow the money. It's always going to be your best option. That'll do it for us. Thank you guys for joining us. Great show. Excited to get back to this one again next Friday. So come join us again at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll talk to you later. Good luck this weekend.